Hastings. Thank you for joining us to celebrate 50 years of Help and Hope. And although none of us were prepared for what last year brought, we are so grateful for our ability to respond due to the long history of strong leadership, due to the commitment of so many staff and volunteers, and because of the amazing community involvement and support. Please join me as we celebrate this milestone, and we celebrate the people and long-standing support that has made it possible for neighbors to help neighbors for 50 years. It all started with a phone call from the school nurse to Dawn Sheridan Beadle. The nurse had asked Dawn if she could help collect children's clothing for a family that was expecting their 9th child. Dawn realized there were other families who needed help, so she enlisted her neighbor, Mary Jean Engstrom. She called on Virginia McHale, the Hastings Area Chamber of Commerce Director, and Lou Lindy, a local attorney. Together, these four assessed the greater social needs in this community and determined that a physical location was necessary. Thanks to an initial grant of $1,500 from the United Way of Hastings, the first location on Ramsey Street opened its doors. Within 6 short months, Dawn was hired as the first executive director, and Rosie Sontag helped recruit and train 150 volunteers. Donations began coming in, and the clothes closet revenue covered the expenses. What started as this little mission on the Mississippi has become a much larger organization today. This community org was born with the mission we strive to carry out each day. The people of the Hastings area reaching out as family in support and service to one another. When I arrived in 2005, Janet Gratz had just retired after 20 years of helping HFS become a household name in this community. Our neighbors knew they had a place to turn if they needed help. Our mission had become this community's mission. Our educators engaged their students by coordinating food and fun drives. And people celebrated life's milestones by foregoing a gift and asking friends and family to donate to HFS instead. The business community rallied around our events and programs. Janet truly was a community organizer. I had wondered if there really were hungry people in Hastings. I had lived in this community for 20 years and had not seen signs of hunger. I saw stories of hunger and homelessness in the Twin Cities, but I felt good knowing that that was not the case in my community. On January 10th, 2005, I arrived for what I thought would be a full day of new employee orientation. The board chair, Diane Cooper Nelson, introduced me to the staff. We had coffee and treats, and then Diane left. The staff went to work, and so I proceeded to my office and I realized that orientation was over. As I began opening file cabinets and assessing my office, I looked up and saw a young family standing in the doorway. Mom was pregnant, Dad had a document in his hand, and the curly-haired 2-year-old had big brown eyes. They looked confused, and we made eye contact, so I greeted them. When I asked them if I could help them, they showed me an eviction notice, and I learned they spoke Spanish. I brought them into Mary Kochak, the food shelf director's office, and she proceeded to learn their story. Mom was enrolled at Inver Hills Community College and was studying nursing. Dad was in construction, but his hours were cut due to the time of year. And they also reported that they would get paid in 4 days, but they were running short on food and were skipping meals to ensure their 2-year-old would have enough to get through the rest of the week. Mary proceeded to offer them something to eat, and at 9:30 in the morning, on my very first day, I heard the sounds of hunger through the office walls down the hall. The little boy was squealing at the sight of cookies. I heard cans of juice being opened and the crackling of packaging as they gobbled up granola bars and fruit. On day 1, I learned that there are hungry people in Hastings, and I was shocked. That year, 23% of the families reported that someone skipped a meal or went without, as there was not enough food to feed the whole family. This past year, that number has more than doubled. I learned very quickly that every day would be a different challenge, a different story, and a different need. But it is our privilege to help our neighbors who need a little help and hope. Over the years, programs have come and gone based on the needs of the community. It started with clothing and food, but has become much more over the past 50 years. In 1974, Glenda Schneering and Carrie Keller of the Hastings Women's Club championed the establishment of a Meals on Wheels program in Hastings in partnership with Regina Hospital and with churches providing drivers. HFS took over the operation of the program in 1978, and Glenda continues to volunteer for Meals on Wheels, and area churches continue to provide many of the drivers. Mick Humbert and Lila Davies helped to get the Just Friends transportation program rolling at Hastings Family Service in 1994, providing rides to medical appointments and offering friendly visiting. We've added school supplies assistance, emergency grants, services for people experiencing homelessness, and lots of information and referral. In 2015, Hastings Family Service became the only agency in the county to have a full-time Dakota County financial worker on site to work with our neighbors. Our most utilized program is our food shelf, and now called the Market. Prior to COVID, HFS provided a full food shelf order that fed a family for 7 to 10 days to about 100 families every month. But that number escalated throughout the pandemic. One day we were a grocery-style food shelf, and the next we had implemented a drive-through. We have also grown the Market to include Market Cart, a mobile produce program that takes fresh and frozen fruits and vegetables out to our senior living communities to address nutritional needs. And Market Express is a 3 to 4 day express food order that was added this past year to meet the increased need. In our 51st year, you will see a new mobile outreach called Market on the Move. We received a generous grant to purchase a refrigerated vehicle that will allow us to take food out into the community and also participate in more food rescue. So providing increased access to food remains a top priority as we enter our next chapter. Our food shelf director, Mary Kochak, has been with the agency for 25 years and has been a big part of developing our food-related programs, and also she has shaped our values, and particularly seeing the person before the situation.
So when I started in 1995, I remember the food shelf was so small that we were able to have one chest freezer and one refrigerator. And from that space, the little shelving units we had, we could literally touch the shelf and put it in the bag for the family. And at that point, we had just hamburger and chicken for meat, and then other canned goods that were donated in. And then we would go walk through our little alley, our little hallway, and then we would put it on the stoop in the rear of the building, what used to be RJ's, which is now Fireside, and then families would come along through the alley and then pick up their groceries. And this was the same place that people would also donate in clothing. And the only shelving that we had was constructed out of 2x4s that community people came in and helped build for us. The upstairs of this building was such that we could only put stock around the perimeter of the upstairs because in the middle it was too spongy and we were afraid we'd lose a volunteer or staff through the roof. But yet, even with those things, Hastings Family Service has always been a very welcoming, very friendly place for people to come in. One of my earliest memories was actually a student who was in 4th grade, and he would come by after school, And he would sit on these stairs that we would go up to the second floor. And I just noticed several days he came in, and I thought, let's give him something to eat. Let's give him a snack. Let's give him some juice. And he would sit there, and I would talk to him, and then also our lady in the store would have a conversation. And the main thing with this is he didn't have anybody to go home to. And he used Hastings Family Service, and that is a role that we have played throughout the 50 years of people coming in and being able to have conversations with him. And that young man would come in and just visit. And that was a nice, safe oasis. So things that Family Service has done over 50 years because of the support of the community is offer help and hope. And that's just one illustration. We have had people that come in our store currently, and this is their social environment, so that they're able to come in and we can treat with kindness and compassion our neighbors in our community. So that's where we started. And then we have expanded. As far as the next building we were able to go into, which was the old Chamber of Commerce building, which allowed us some more space. So we were able to add a 3-door refrigerator and freezer. And what also happened at that point was we had been doing different outreach in the schools, visiting with students, because there was also something that was truly amazing that occurred at that time, which was Hands Across Hastings, which a lot of us still remember. And what that was a food drive that they would pass hand to hand from, it was all the schools, but it was housed over at Kennedy. So it went, if you think about it, Kennedy on 10th and Tyler, just a stream of people that came all the way down to Family Service, and that's how they passed the food. And I mean, talk about community. You had veterans, you had seniors, you had kids, you had moms, dads. We even had the governor that came down. So when I think of those things that I remember for our length of time here, that is one that really comes to mind. And that all came about because of a student where we went out and visited with them. We moved into a different way of doing services. We went to what's called choice. And it happened because a 3rd grader, when I was out talking to them, raised his hand and said, "Say, do you ask people what they want in their food box, or do you just put it in?" And I said, sheepishly, "I just put it in." And he said, "Well, how come you do that?" Because he said, "I don't like pineapple, but I really like applesauce. And I also really enjoyed the fruit roll-ups." So what that said to me is, here I have a little person whose family had been to Hastings Family Service, and what a great idea. A 9-year-old. And I went back and I thought, why do we do that? And actually that was cutting edge at the time. So we decided we should do that. Because when people are in a crisis and they don't have many things in their control, at least they can choose the food that they're going to put on their table for their family. And that way kids would see it as a treat to get applesauce. So we started with a checklist where families could do that. It was well received. We did a survey of families because that's another thing that's in our heart. We always ask our neighbors, hey, is this working for you? Should we be doing something different? And they came back overwhelmingly that they enjoyed being able to have some choice. So we started with that, and then when we entered into our new building here, it gave us the luxury to actually have shopping. So because of the space that this building, that the community provided to us, families are able to, on their own, take a food list and shop and pick out those things that they know their family would enjoy. The other beauty of this space and in this market as we have today is there's a little play area so that kids don't have to be stressed. And as we know, if you're shopping and you're a parent, if the kids are doing good, makes it a much more enjoyable experience for you. So we have kids that they come in and they're like, oh, we get to go into the market and play. They don't see it as I'm here, and they're frustrated. So again, that's another piece that as an agency and as a community, we want to make sure we see the person first. And people go through different crises in their life for a snippet of time. It is not something that defines people. So it's very important to remember that. And another thing is, because we've been here for 50 years, we have individuals that at a point in their life, they needed to come in and just get a hand for a little piece of time. But then the beauty that you see is that then they come back and are now today's donors. So we've had stories where at Christmas time, we had a gentleman come in, and he needed to get Christmas for his family for what was going on. But he said, I'll be back. He said, I'm going to be back, and I'm going to donate and be able to help another family like my family needs now. And no more than 1 or 2 years later, he came in November and said, our family wants to adopt a family through Hastings Family Service. So you have this cyclical thing that people, when you need it, we're here. And then when you can donate, you can help other people in your community. Because you really get a latitude of acceptance when you've been through a crisis, and then you realize that other people do too. And frankly, it's a lot easier to be on the giving end than on the receiving end. So that is something that 50 years has brought us as well. The recession of 2008. Because what happened is that a lot of people found themselves in a situation of no fault of their own, that the economy went out and people lost jobs. So you had a whole group of neighbors that were coming in that didn't have any background or experience in how to utilize, and frankly, what's out there for programs to help your family. And it was extremely hard, which it is for everyone, to walk through that door. We've had situations where we've had people pull up to the curb and not be able to come in. Then they'd pull up to the curb again and not be able to come in. Then when this person came in the third time, he sat down and said, I've been here 3 times. This is the first time I could walk through the door. So it is extremely hard for people. So when they find them in a circumstance that is totally foreign to them, they need help to say what is out there. So I recall that time where we spent a lot of time with each and every appointment explaining what are the things that are out there that could help your family, in addition to the food that we could do, in addition to the financial grants, in addition to the listening ear, to extend to people, call us. If you get home, this isn't new to us, you get confused, give us a call and we will always respond to you. That's another thing that is a value of Hastings Family Service, is we are responsive. If you're calling, we definitely are going to call you back with right around 24 hours so that you get a call back. Because it's so disheartening when you reach out for help and then nobody calls you back. Also, one thing to remember is that during the recession, and this is the thing that's concerning me with what we're dealing with presently with COVID, is that you always heard this phrase, on the road to recovery. Well, for a lot of people, they couldn't find that road. And they spent years trying to get back to where they were. And that really concerns me with the COVID situation right now, that we have to make sure that there's equity and that everyone has an on-ramp to this road to recovery. And I would be a strong advocate, not just recovery, we need to thrive. So we need to have somebody's life better than what it was when we were experiencing COVID. And just that experience of the recession, that was not true. So for us all to be vigilant, because when we're all moving forward, that's best for our whole community. The thing I'm most proud of is that as an agency, we're part of the community, as part of Hastings Family Service, that people have an ownership and they have an investment in Hastings Family Service. I'm very proud that we have always seen the person before the circumstance that brought them into our doors. And that we always, from the very beginning, I'm sure when they sat around that table deciding how they were going to structure Hastings Family Service, it was just an idea, and then to have it last for 50 years, the basic values of dignity, respect, kindness for others are the pillars for the agency. And that is something that has lasted in our longevity, and that is just very, very important. So that's the thing I'm most proud of. The other thing I'm proud of is that Hastings as a community has a culture of serving. So that's instilled in youth. You can see that through different church youth organizations. You can see that through the schools. You can see that through the Boy Scouts, where adults are bringing youth so that they can get a hands-on experience of that you care for each other. And that's a value of the agency and the community at large. A story from this summer was I was out putting food on our rack out in the alleyway for somebody to pick up, and all of a sudden this dad comes by with his kids on bicycles. And he was very respectful. He waited till the family left, and then he approached and he said, "Now boys, this is Hastings Family Service. They're able to give people food that can't go to the grocery store. And we're coming today because we need to help them." And so he pulled out his wallet and gave us some cash. And now, be mindful, this was a 4-year-old, and my guess would be maybe a 6-year-old. And they said, we want to do this in honor of somebody. And they all knew who that was, a family member. But again, it's this culture of us teaching each other what it is to serve and what it is to see beyond yourself. So that's also something that I'm very proud of. I think the main thing for the next 50 years or beyond, because it'll be here long, hopefully we won't need it, but if we do, is to not lose your values and to not lose your heart why you're here, and to always see people. Because what has happened that we've all seen is that when an agency kind of extends themselves too far beyond what their critical mission is, it implodes. And that then you get beyond what your mission is, and it's too stretched out, and you can't then do anything that is of value. So I think that's something we really were mindful of. We would always, like I was saying, survey our neighbors to make sure that we're meeting the needs, because needs are fluid, they can change. And one point of consideration is just friends. Because of where we live, transportation was becoming a real issue, always had been, for our neighbors, but then the Just Friends program was birthed in order to meet that need for county appointments and for medical. We do surveys to our neighbors when we are deciding what kinds of things to offer in the market. And then we're responsive, because one thing that's important is if you're asking somebody a question, you need to be responsive and implement that request. So that's how we also grew in the market. I mean, people were referencing they wanted more meat, they wanted more dairy, they wanted more produce, they wanted everything that you and I want. So that way we were able to target funding in order and capacity, new walk-in freezers, new walk-in coolers through grant money. And that way we're able to help meet that need for our neighbors, just like we want those things for our own family.
We've had a lot of help along the way from the very beginning. Hastings is fortunate to have all three media sources: a local radio station, KDWA, Hastings Community TV, and the Hastings Star-Gazette. Thank you to Dan and Barb Massman and Mo Sieben at KDWA, to Tom Wright and Mike Bremer and the staff at HCTV, and to Chad Richardson and Jane Lightbourne for being critical partners in telling the HFS story over the past 50 years. Our Associate Director, Amy Sutton, came to Hastings Family Service in 2009, and she has been a big part of our growth over the past decade. Before Amy came on board, I not only led the organization, but also wrote the grants. When Amy came on, our trajectory changed and the growth was incredible.
It has been a privilege to work alongside a leader like Chris Cope. What she added when she arrived as the executive director in 2005 is a growth mindset. A foundation of community support had been built, so the agency was positioned to serve the community at an even higher level. Chris went right to work with strategic planning and visioning that brought Hastings Family Service the needed resources for growth and change. One of those resources was me. I learned very quickly that Hastings Family Service has extraordinary community support. Never has that been more apparent than in 2020, a 50th year no one could have imagined. Hastings Family Service experienced a 73% increase in food shelf need in December of 2020 compared to April. But we were able to meet that increased need because the community again rallied to help each other through a difficult time. We received over 1,000 additional gifts in 2020 as compared to the previous year. Hastings Family Service is supported by individuals, families, churches, businesses, service groups like the Lions, the Rotary, and American Veterans Organizations. As I think back over the 12 years I've been with Hastings Family Service, how people give has changed a great deal, but the support from the community remains constant. When I first arrived, Hastings Family Service had received a handful of online gifts. Now we receive hundreds of online gifts each year. We used to just write checks, and many of us still do. But people have so many more options and ways to give now. We have 100 people who've joined our Family Table Monthly Giving program to help us all year long. And those gifts come online, they come by check, through donor-advised funds and employee giving. Donors who need to take required minimum distributions from their retirement accounts can now direct them to Hastings Family Service. And more people are requesting memorial gifts to Hastings Family Service in honor of their loved ones. There are stock gifts, legacy gifts through wills or trusts. You can even text to give now, and 50 years ago, we didn't have cell phones or the internet. Businesses and churches continue to hold food drives, provide sponsorships, offer roundups at their cash registers, and every single week, Emily's, Cub, Coburn's, and Quick Trip provide donations to the food shelf. And that's just a drop in the bucket of what this community does. It is neighbors taking care of neighbors, and that is what has created 50 years of help and hope. So another highlight for me was the Bring the Mission Home capital campaign. After 6 different moves around downtown area, we launched the campaign in 2011 to raise $1 million to finally purchase and renovate a permanent home for Hastings Family Service. The campaign was successful, and your generosity transformed how we're able to deliver services for neighbors in a more dignified and respectful way. Our new home created space for a grocery-style food shelf that we now call the Market. We included kid-friendly and family-friendly spaces throughout the building for neighbors receiving services. We added a donation center to make it easy to donate, and we created an expanded client services area where people can access computers and phones as well as services. We've worked really hard at Hastings Family Service to build a welcoming culture of mutual respect and to spend time with our neighbors to really listen and figure out how else we might be able to help. The new location also increased the size of our thrift store, and the original clothes closet and more became Rivertown Treasures. Just as we did in 1970, we continue to provide clothing and household items to neighbors in need, and now we also offer a great community place to shop. Rivertown Treasures provides a sustainable source of revenue to support Hastings Family Service programs and services. So having the store closed throughout our 50th year due to COVID has been really difficult. But having the store to utilize as overflow space for food sorting and storage gave us exactly what we needed to make the work possible during a really difficult year. Many of you have probably been introduced to Hastings Family Service through events. You've supported us by sponsoring, attending, or participating in some great events that have been around for a really long time. They have become community and family traditions, especially Gobblegate, which is a Thanksgiving Day run or walk that has raised over $1.5 million for Hastings Family Service over the past 23 years. Mary Fassbender, Jay Kokendorfer, and Brian Radke have organized and built the event into a fun family tradition that the whole community gets behind and participates in. The organizers, participants, and sponsors of Gobblegate have been an important part of the growth and sustainability of HFS over the years. Gobblegate's longstanding partnership has provided substantial financial support that has helped Hastings Family Service to invest in infrastructure, staffing, and programming. But maybe even more so, it has built community ownership, reinforcing that this organization is the community's organization. And many of you might remember Project Share events through the years, supporting families during the holidays. In fact, the first Project Share event was held the December before Hastings Family Service was even incorporated. It was sponsored by Smead Manufacturing and organized by Dave Bedoin of KDWA and Jim Kafis of First National Bank. And it was later carried on for many years by Dan and Barb Massman of KDWA and Chad Collignon of First National Bank. In the early days of Hastings Family Service, holiday assistance was distributed at the Armory, and the Lions Club held a big toy drive to help with toys. Today, nearly all of the families needing holiday assistance for gifts are helped through our Adopt a Family program and a small North Pole room at Hastings Family Service. For years, Project Share included a community concert hosted at First National Bank and broadcast on KDWA and HCTV. We loved hearing the church and student groups sing and having Mo Sieben bring a children's choir from her neighborhood. And it always included an auction through KDWA to raise funds that was championed by local businessman and auctioneer Clarence Roddy. Clarence was committed to helping Project Share provide holiday support for over 40 years. And when the event and the auction were no longer possible, we approached the organizers and we received permission to name our entire holiday assistance program Project Share, in honor of those original events that built our holiday assistance program from the very beginning and made the holidays brighter for so many families. Hastings Tastings began 26 years ago to help raise funds during Minnesota Food Share, which is a statewide initiative that has been helping to restock food shelves for 40 years. Hastings Tastings is possible because of the generosity of our area eating and drinking establishments, and the event raises about $25,000 per year for Hastings Family Service. We've had to cancel the event the past 2 years due to the pandemic, but we turned the event into a Hastings Tastings takeout initiative instead to try to help the restaurants that have so generously helped us for so many years. We can't wait to get back to a traditional Hastings Tastings next year. But this June, we'll be hosting our first annual Drive-Out Hunger Golf Tournament at the Hastings Golf Club, and we hope it will become a long-standing tradition like all of these other events. The community has found so many ways to support us, from lemonade stands to the holiday train, an annual Give Thanks concert, the King's Place toy drive, the middle school tug-of-war event, one of my favorites, an ecumenical church service, powder puff football games, school coin drives and food drives that are held during Merchants Bank's 10 Days of Giving. So many great moments. And I think it bodes well for our community that our children are learning at a very early age that they can make a difference. Resources and people make it happen. And I'm the lucky one who gets to see each day how that generosity pours in from the community, and then the magic that happens within our walls from our amazing volunteers. And then seeing a family leave with hope and smiles and the weight of the world off of their shoulders. I wish there was a way for every single one of you to witness that, to really see how what you do makes a difference. I think we all have those moments that open our eyes to the needs around us and inspire us to help. When I joined the staff in 2009, my oldest daughter was a first grader. And 2 weeks before summer break, she started asking me if she could take an orange to school. So I sent one with her, thinking they must get a special snack or something during the last weeks. But when she kept asking each day, I finally asked her, "Why do you need oranges?" And her response was, "Because they're Nancy's favorite." So I asked, "Why does Nancy need oranges?" And Taylor told me, "Because when we don't have school, Mom, she doesn't get lunch, so we're saving them under her bed." She didn't want to have to share with her brother, so that's why they were saving them under the bed. But imagine two little 6-year-olds having this conversation on a playground. And I had seen Nancy all year long as I volunteered in class. She was the sweetest little thing, but she was always fidgeting and couldn't focus or sit still. And what really broke my heart is that I am working at a food shelf and didn't realize that it was because she was hungry. But you know what? It also gave me hope. Because if two little girls on a playground can come up with a way to help each other, so can we.
Everything we are today is because of the people and support that have brought Hastings Family Service to this point. The community has helped to build a solid foundation that will allow the organization to continue to shift and pivot when needed and to grow and serve our neighbors. So we are closing the door on this 50th year with gratitude for all who have made it possible and looking forward to serving the community for many more years to come. Thank you to our founders for their vision, volunteers and staff who've made the work possible over the years, to decades of board and committee members who've helped to guide the organization's growth and purpose.
Thank you to all the individuals, businesses, service groups, schools, churches, and volunteers who have donated their time, talents, and resources, and who continue to help Hastings Family Service provide help and hope to our neighbors. A big thank you to the Catherine B. Anderson Fund and its advisors and the St. Paul Foundation. They have championed our strategic planning and capacity building to allow the agency to take its next big steps. Thanks to the Ruth Gale and George W. Doffing Charitable Fund and its advisors for creating opportunities for growth, efficiency, and new programs for the past 16 years. Thank you to Gobblegate and its organizers, sponsors, and participants who have raised over $1.5 million over the past 23 years, making so much more possible. And a big thank you to our volunteers. They make it possible to serve the basic needs of our neighbors every single day, and their dedication and generosity is inspiring. We couldn't do it without them. One of those volunteers who stayed involved and was with us for our first 50 years was founder Lou Lindy, who also established an endowment for Hastings Family Service 20 years ago to make sure the organization was focusing on future sustainability.
Hastings Family Service has really grown over the years. It's got a good reputation. What would Hastings be like today if it weren't for Hastings Family Service?
It would be difficult to predict what the community would look like without Hastings Family Service. But we know its presence helps to develop stronger, healthier families and a safer, welcoming community for all. With your ongoing support and encouragement, Hastings Family Service will continue to provide help and hope to thousands of individuals and families each year.
We lost Lou to COVID-19 during our 50th year, but he lived every single day with purpose, and he left behind quite a legacy. At Lou's 90th birthday celebration, I told him that while we often talk about the thousands of people helped each year by Hastings Family Service, the organization's impact is even greater than that. It has given an entire community a common good to support and champion. It has given thousands of volunteers the chance to connect and make a difference in the lives of their neighbors. And it's given dozens of staff members purpose and opportunity. It is such a blessing to wake up each morning and want to go to work, to love what you do and be surrounded by hope and love and amazing people. And I told Lou, mine is one of those lives forever impacted by Hastings Family Service. Over the past 50 years, this organization has turned an entire community into family. We are all Hastings Family Service.
It's going to be around for a long, long time.